50 miles into a slightly bigger town, Hooterville, and find something to do. They went bowling at an alley with warped lanes and chipped balls, and afterwards had a chocolate soda, and finally looked at a Playboy in a drugstore. And on the way home, the cousin sighed with immense satisfaction and said, "Gee, thanks, Stan. That was the best time I ever had in my whole life." It's true. See, I never felt altogether at home in Iowa, even when I was small. In about 1957, my grandparents gave me a Viewmaster for my birthday and a packet of discs with the title, "Iowa, Our Glorious State." I can remember thinking even then that the selection of glories was a trifle on the thin side. With no natural features of note, no national parks, no battlefields or famous birthplaces, the Viewmaster people had to stretch their creative 3D talents to the full. Putting the Viewmaster to your eyes and clicking the white handle gave you, as I recall, a shot of Herbert Hoover's birthplace, the highway bridge over the Mississippi River at Davenport. It was funny how all the cars seemed to be hurrying out of Iowa, a field of waving corn, and the highway bridge over the Missouri River at Council Bluffs. I can remember thinking, even then, that there must be more to life than that. Then, one gray Sunday afternoon when I was about 10, I was watching TV and there was a documentary on about movie making in Europe. One clip showed Anthony Perkins walking along some sloping city street at dusk. I don't remember now if it was Rome or Paris, but the street was cobbled and shiny with rain, and Perkins was hunched deep in a trench coat, and I thought, hey, c'est moi! I began to consume National Geographics with their pictures of glowing Icelandic maidens and mist-shrouded castles and ancient cities of infinite charm. From that moment, I wanted to be a European boy. I wanted to live in an apartment across from a park in the heart of a city, and from my bedroom window look out on a crowded vista of hills and rooftops. I wanted to ride trams and understand strange languages. I wanted friends named Werner and Marco who wore short pants and played soccer in the street and owned toys made of wood. I wanted my mother to send me out to buy long loaves of bread from a shop with a wooden pretzel hanging above the entrance. I wanted to step outside my front door and be somewhere. As soon as I was old enough, I left. I left Des Moines and Iowa and the United States and the war in Vietnam and Watergate and settled across the world. Years later, when I finally came home, it was to a foreign country. My father liked Iowa. He lived his whole life in the state and is even now working his way through eternity there in Glendale Cemetery in Des Moines. But every year he became seized with a quietly maniacal urge to get out of the state and go on vacation. Every summer, without a whole lot of notice, he would load the car to Groening, hurry us into it, take off for some distant point, return to get his wallet after having driven almost to the next state, and take off again for some distant point. Every year it was the same. Every year it was awful. The big killer was the tedium. Iowa is in the middle of the biggest plain this side of Jupiter. Climb onto a rooftop almost anywhere in the state, and you're confronted with a featureless sweep of corn for as far as the eye can see. It is 1,000 miles from the sea in any direction. 400 miles from the nearest mountain, 300 miles from skyscrapers and muggers and things of interest, 200 miles from people who do not habitually stick a finger in their ear and swivel it around as a preliminary to answering any question addressed to them by a stranger. To reach anywhere of even passing interest from Des Moines by car requires a journey that in other countries would be considered epic. It means days and days of unrelenting tedium in a baking steel capsule on a ribbon of highway. In my memory, our vacations were always taken in a big blue Rambler station wagon. It was a cruddy car. My dad always bought cruddy cars until he got to the male menopause and started buying zippy red convertibles, but it had the great virtue of space. My brother, sister, and I in the back were miles away from my parents up front, in effect, in another room. We quickly discovered during illicit forays into the picnic hamper that if you stuck a bunch of Ohio blue-tip matches into an apple or hard-boiled egg so that it resembled a porcupine and casually dropped it out the tailgate window, it was like a bomb. It would explode with a small bang and a surprisingly big flash of blue flame, causing the cars following behind to veer in an amusing fashion. My dad, miles away up front, never knew what was going on and could not understand why all day long cars would zoom up alongside him with the driver gesticulating furiously before tearing off into the distance. "Oh, what was that all about?" he would say to my mother in a wounded tone. "I don't know, dear," my mother would answer mildly. My mother only ever said two things. She said, "I don't know, dear," and she said, "Can I get you a sandwich, honey?" Occasionally on our trips she would volunteer other pieces of intelligence, like, "Should that dashboard light be glowing like that, dear?" Or, "I think you hit that dog-stroke-man-stroke-blind person back there, honey." But mostly she wisely kept quiet. This was because, on vacations, my father was a man obsessed. His principal obsession was with trying to economize. He always took us to the crummiest hotels and motor lodges, and to the kind of roadside eating houses where they only washed the dishes weekly. You always knew with a sense of doom that at some point before finishing you were going to discover someone else's congealed egg yolk lurking somewhere on your plate or plugged between the tines of your fork. But even that was a relative treat. Usually we were forced to picnic by the side of the road. My father had an instinct for picking bad picnic sites, on the apron of a busy truck stop, or in a little park that turned out to be in the heart of some seriously deprived ghetto, so that groups of children would come and stand silently by our table and watch us eating cupcakes and crinkle-cut potato chips. And it always became incredibly windy the moment we stopped, so that my mother would spend the whole of lunchtime chasing paper plates over an area of about an acre. In 1957, my father invested $19.98 in a portable gas stove that took an hour to assemble before each use, and was so wildly temperamental that we children were always ordered to stand well back when it was being lit. This always proved unnecessary, however, because the stove would flicker to life only for a few seconds before puttering out, and my father would spend many hours turning it this way and that to keep it out of the wind, simultaneously addressing it in a low, agitated tone normally associated with the chronically insane. All the while, my brother, sister, and I would implore him to take us someplace with air conditioning, linen tablecloths, and ice cubes clinking in glasses of clear water, but he wouldn't have it. He was a child of the Depression, and when capital outlays were involved, he always wore the haunted look of a fugitive who has just heard bloodhounds in the distance. Eventually, with the sun low in the sky, he would hand us hamburgers that were cold and raw and smelled of butane. We would take one bite and refuse to eat any more. So my father would lose his temper and throw everything into the car and drive us at high speed to some roadside diner where a sweaty man with a floppy hat would sling hash while grease fires danced on his grill. And afterwards, in a silent car filled with bitterness and unquenched basic needs, we would mistakenly turn off the main highway and get lost and end up in some no-hope hamlet with a name like Drano, Indiana, or Tapwater, Missouri, and get a room in the only hotel in town. The sort of rundown place where if you wanted to watch TV, it meant you had to sit in the lobby and share a cracked leatherette sofa with an old man with big sweat circles under his arms. The old man would almost certainly have only one leg, and probably one other truly arresting deficiency, like no nose or a caved-in forehead, which meant that although you were sincerely intent on watching Laramie or Our Miss Brooks, you found your gaze being drawn ineluctably and sneakily to the amazing, eaten-away body sitting beside you. You couldn't help yourself. Occasionally the man would turn out to have no tongue, in which case he would try to engage you in lively conversation. After a week or so of this kind of searing torment, we would finally fetch up at some blue and glinting sweep of lake or sea, in a bowl of pine-clad mountains, a place full of swings and amusements, and the gay shrieks of children splashing in water, and it would all almost be worth it. Dad would become funny and warm, and even once or twice might take us out to the sort of restaurant where you didn't have to watch your food being cooked, and where the glass of water they served you wasn't autographed with lipstick. It was against this disturbed and erratic background that I became gripped with a curious urge to go back to the land of my youth and make what the blurb writers like to call a journey of discovery. On another continent, 4,000 miles away, I became quietly seized with that nostalgia that overcomes you when you've reached the middle of your life and your father has recently died, and it dawns on you that when he went, he took some of you with him. I wanted to go back to the magic places of my youth and see if they were as good as I remembered them. I wanted to hear the long, low sound of a Rock Island locomotive calling across a still night, and the clack of it receding into the distance. I wanted to see lightning bugs and hear crickets and be inescapably immersed in that hot, crazy-making climate that makes your underwear scoot up every crack and fissure and cling to you like latex and drives mild-mannered men to pull out handguns in bars and light up the night with gunfire. I wanted to see America. I wanted to come home. So I flew to Des Moines and acquired a sheaf of road maps, which I studied and puzzled over on the living room floor, drawing an immense circular itinerary. My mother, meantime, made me sandwiches and said, "Oh, I don't know, dear," when I asked her questions about the vacations of my childhood. And one September dawn in my 36th year, I crept out of my childhood home, slid behind the wheel of an aging Chevrolet Chevette lent me by my sainted and trusting mother, and guided it out through the flat, sleeping streets of the city. I cruised down an empty freeway, the only person with a mission in a city of 250,000 sleeping souls. The sun was already high in the sky and promised a blisteringly hot day. Ahead of me lay about 1,000,000 square miles of quietly rustling corn.